Hi, I'm Randy Laviolette.
And I'm Andrew Doty. Welcome to this edition of PC Voyage.
Let's go. I'm Randy Laviolette.
And I'm Andrew Doty.
Tonight on PC Voyage, we have a special Bits and PCs episode. You know how we have all these little bits and PCs at the end of every PC Voyage, or just about?
One big one, just one big monstrous Bits and PCs.
we're gonna. I
Bits
can't
and
say.
PCs. Yes,
yes, that's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it.
And now here's Keith, our Bits and PCs aficionado,
with Bits and PCs.
Hi, I'm Keith Davis, and welcome to Bits and PCs. You know, a lot of people don't realize that you can run all of the software on your computer and all of your utilities from a single file that you can create and maintain. And this is a batch file. And most people think you need Windows, you need DOS shell, or you need auto menu or something like that in order to launch programs and get things running, but you really don't. Using very little disk space and hardly any memory at all, you can create a batch file that will run everything on your computer. And not a lot of people are aware of that. And what I'm going to do over the next couple of shows is show you how to create batch files that run individual programs, and then we'll show how to merge these batch files together into one batch file to make a single one that runs all of the software on your computer. Now, if we take a look at the screen here, we have a menu, and this menu is a separate text file, but it references a lot of the software that's on this particular machine. And these are run by hotkeys. If we hit Alt F1, for instance, it says Professional Write. Professional Write comes up to the screen. And Alt F2 is Quattro. And Alt F3 is dbase. These are all programs that a lot of people are familiar with. And when we escape the programs, we come back to our menus. And this is all being done because there's a single batch file that is set up to go to the directories and run these programs. And it's kind of difficult to show how to do all of this in one shot. So what I'm going to do here is just show the basic steps that you go through when you run a program, and then we'll show how to incorporate those steps into a batch file. Now what I'm going to do in this case is we're going to use Quattro as an example. We're in the root directory here. If we look on the screen, and in the root directory we have several subdirectories, one of which is Quattro, and that's right here. Now in order to run Quattro, the steps would be to change directories to there, and now we're in the Quattro directory, and we can take a look at all the files that are in there. There's a couple screens of files, and the executable file that runs Quattro is Q. So we type Q and Quattro runs, and we could create a spreadsheet here and put in our formulas and save this. And when we exit, we are, again, we're right back here at the Quattro subdirectory, and then we change directories back to the root directory, and we can bring up our menu here. Okay, so we've gone through several steps, and in order to do all of those in a single file, we can create a batch file and list all of those steps, and we can even throw in a few extra steps too. So let's create a batch file, and we'll call it ss.bat for spreadsheet, and in that batch file we'll incorporate the commands to get into the directory, run the program, and get back to our root directory here. And we're going to use our full screen editor called edit.com, and we're going to, we don't have this batch file created, so we're going to create it now, and we'll give it a name right now, ss.bat. Now, let's give it the list of commands that we did, and we want to use @echo off, and that's so these particular commands that are in our batch file will not show on the screen. And we'll use the clear screen command to clear the screen of the menu. And we'll just put in the commands that get us to the directory, change directories to Quattro. We'll run Q, and Q.exe is the executable file. We don't have to put .exe in there. That's an optional thing. We can leave it like this. And after we exit Quattro, we're going to change directories. And in this case, we're on the C drive back to the root directory. And let's clear the screen, and let's type our menu, menu.mnu. That's our text file that looks like a menu. So here's our little batch file, and hopefully when we run ss.bat, it will go to Quattro, it'll run it, and get us back to our menu when we're all done. And we'll save this. We'll hit the F4 key, and our little editor here saves and gets out. And if we do a directory, at the very bottom of the directory, we now have a file called ss.bat. So let's try this and see what happens here. Okay, we're into Quattro now. And again, we would enter all our data, and we would save this, give our spreadsheet a file name. But when we exit Quattro, quit, and we there we are back in the root directory, and our menu is up on the screen. So those are the basic steps that you would use to use a batch file to get a program running. And we're going to do one more thing here. Let's say you want to put in a utility program to use along with Quattro, and like Sidekick, for instance. So we're going to edit our batch file. And before we go to the directory, we're going to insert a line here, and we're going to use a utility called mark, which marks the memory. And we're going to type sk right here. sk is Sidekick, and it's in the DOS directory, and the DOS directory is where the path is set to. So the computer will find Sidekick, and then it will go into Quattro. And when we come out of Quattro, we want to use another utility called release to get Sidekick out of memory, and then display our menu. So now what we've done is we've added a couple extra steps to the batch file here. And let's see if this works. Okay, now we should have Sidekick installed. And there's our calendar, and let's see if we have the calculator. There's Sidekick's calculator. And when we quit here, I'm telling you, everything happens so fast. We're back at our menu, and Sidekick has been removed from memory. And that's all because our batch file, ss.bat, has taken care of all that stuff for us. So on our menu here, we could put type SS to get the spreadsheet program running. Now, next time we'll look at combining more than one batch file together into a single batch file, so that we don't have to create many, many batch files to run our programs. And we'll see you next time on Bits and PCs. Where did that file go?
And remember, PC Voyage is made possible because of you, the viewer. And we're going to give you something back, hopefully.
You mean it's not from a grant from the Public Broadcasting Company?
No, unfortunately it's not.
Oh, that's why we don't get paid.
And if you write to us with your comments or suggestions or story ideas, you stand the chance of winning QuickBooks, Scrapbook Plus, Stacker, Central Point Antivirus, Quicken, 386 to the Max, The Untouchable, these wonderful tickets to the Boston Science Museum, or
Boston Computer Museum.
Yes, or Russ Walter's book, Secret Guide to Computers. So send us your comments or suggestions.
And now, you know, as an extra special treat, I know we brought you a lot of bits and pieces already. We have an extra special treat for you. More Bits and PCs with Keith Davis.
Keith?
Hi, I'm Keith Davis, and welcome to Bits and PCs. Last week we talked about a batch file that would run a program on your computer. We made a little batch file called ss.bat, which ran Quattro, a spreadsheet program, and even installed a little utility for us as it went through the motions of launching the program. And you can create many batch files, say in the root directory of the computer, to run the programs that are on your machine, but you can also create a single batch file that will run all the programs on your computer. And it's a little better having that than having 20 or 30 individual batch files. It's easier to maintain and keep track of what's going on. Now let's take a look at the one that we created before, just to give you an idea of what it looked like. And it was a little batch file called ss.bat, and it just went through the steps of, in this case, it marked the memory, it installed Sidekick, it went to the Quattro subdirectory, it ran Quattro, it released Sidekick out of memory, came back to the root directory and displayed the menu. And that would be typical of any batch file that runs a program. The problem with that is you can get too many of them to deal with, and the best thing to do is combine them all into one file. Now on this computer, we have a file called a.bat, and it runs all of the software on the computer. And here's a menu that shows a lot of the programs that are available. And let's take a look at a.bat to see how this is set up. We're going to use our file viewer called C. And the way you do it when you want to set up the computer to run several programs is you use what's called a variable or a replaceable parameter. And you type the name of the batch file, in this case A, and a space, and then in the case of a menu, we want to use just some numbers, 1 through whatever number of programs you have on your computer. And you can see down here we have :1, and it says Design CAD. And these are the steps that are used to run a CAD program called Design CAD. And that's in this section of the batch file. So if we were to type A space 1, there's a command here that says go to %1. And %1 is the first thing that we type after the letter A. So if we type A space 2, it will go to a label called 2, and the label was identified by :2. And it will get down to this area of the batch file and begin executing this list of programs, of commands. And in this case, it's PC Paintbrush. It installs the mouse. In this case, we have the mouse command is rammed out, and we're not using it right here. But it runs PC Paintbrush and eventually comes back to the root directory and redisplays our menu. And so that it won't continue on to the next step in here, we have a command that says go to end. And way down at the end of this long batch file, we have a :end, and that returns us to our DOS prompt when we're all done. And you can see that all throughout this we have little paragraphs, and these are various programs. Here's Norton Utilities. This part of the batch file that runs Norton shuts off the screensaver. It goes into Norton Utilities directory, which is called NU. It runs Norton. After Norton is done, it turns the screensaver program back on and goes back to the root directory and displays our menu again. So if we were to type A14, for instance, Norton Utilities should run. In fact, let's try that out and make sure all that works. A14. And there's Norton Utilities. And when we exit Norton Utilities, we're back at our menu here. So you can combine all the commands to run the programs into a single batch file, and use that one batch file to run all the programs. And let's take a look at the size of that batch file. And let's find it here in the root directory. Here it is right here, a.bat. It's only 2,300 bytes long. And that's not too bad for something that runs all the software on the computer. Along with this, we have our menu, and that's down here, menu.mnu, and that's 1,200 bytes long. So in less than 5,000 bytes of disk space, we have commands that run all the software on the computer. Now, to make everything very handy, we have the ability to set hotkeys to take care of running a.bat and getting us into programs. And you notice on our menu here, we have some of the function keys set to go into the programs. And in this case, we have Alt, F1 through F10, Control, and Shift, using the function keys to launch the programs. And the next time, we'll take a look at how to set hotkeys to run programs on your computer. See you next time. And if you have any questions, write into us. I'm Keith Davis, and this is Bits and PCs.
If you have any questions, or if you have any comments about the show, please write to us. Our new address is PC Voyage, P.O. Box 10486, Holyoke, Massachusetts, 01041. We appreciate hearing from you.
And welcome to Bits and PCs. We've been talking about making a batch file or batch files that will run software on your computer so that you can launch all your application programs, and you don't even need to use a menuing system or DOS shell. You can work it right from a batch file. And the last time we looked at a batch file we have in here called a.bat. And this is it up on the screen here. Let's take a quick look at it one more time. If we type the letter A and a space, and in this case a number, this little goto command goes down to a label. So if we want to run a program like Norton Utilities and we type A14, it will go down to a label 14 right here, and we'll execute all these commands. And this gets into the Norton Utility directory, runs Norton, and when we're done, it gets us back to the root directory and redisplays our text file menu. And if you learn these very simple DOS commands of how to get from the root directory into the directory, you can run the programs. And if you take those same commands and put them into a batch file, it makes it even easier to do. And what we're going to talk about today is setting hotkeys to make the whole situation even easier. Now you notice on our menu we have these hotkeys set here, and all we have to do is to get into Norton, for instance, is hit Alt F10. And let's see how that works. We say Alt F10, and we're into Norton Utilities. And when we exit Norton Utilities, we come back to our menu. Now, how did that hotkey get set? How did we redefine what the Alt F10 key does so that it runs Norton Utilities? And that's what we're going to look at here. Well, in the auto exec file, when this computer boots, we'll take a look at it. We've got a long list of commands here. After we get past our path command and we set some environment variables, we get down here to an area that says echo on, and then we have a prompt command. And the prompt command is followed by what's called an escape sequence, $E bracket, and all of these are very similar here. You can see that they have $E bracket 0 semicolon. And there's a number, and this number corresponds to what the keys are on the keyboard. There's another semicolon, and then there's some commands in here between the quotation marks. At the end there's a semicolon and 13 and the letter P. And if we look through here we can find, let's look for A14. Here it is down here. A14, A is our batch file, and 14 was the label that ran Norton Utilities. The Alt F10 key is, to the computer, is key number 113. So what we're doing is we're redefining what the Alt F10 key does, key number 113, and we're telling it when we hit that key, perform A space 14 and enter. And that key is then going to run our batch file a.bat. Now, in order to do all this, we have to have in the config sys file a screen driver, and let's take a look at that. And in the config sys file, we have down here a screen driver. Now this is very similar to what ANSI.sys would be. ANSI.sys is a file that comes with DOS. This is called Nancy.sys. There's various improvements that are made on ANSI.sys that people have done. There's Nancy.sys and Fancy and Zancy. All of them have more features than DOS's ANSI.sys, but any of them will work in this case. So that has to be in the config sys file, a console driver program like ANSI.sys. And in the auto-exec file, as we go down through the file, we have an echo on command, and then we use this long prompt command. But as you can see, they're all the same. So once you've figured out how to do one, you've basically figured out how to do them all. And I'll show you how to determine these key numbers in just a second. So we use the prompt command to set all these keys as the system boots. And it happens very quickly. And it's probably a fraction of a second. It goes through this list and redefines what all these function keys do. When we get to the end of this list here, we now have to set our normal prompt. And this, of course, doesn't look like a normal prompt, but this is giving us our colors, our white over blue prompt, and our yellow over black text, and our $P, $G. So we also have to set our normal prompt, and then down here we turn the echo back off. So the echo is turned on, the prompt commands are filled in with all the commands from our batch file that run our programs, and we set our prompt, and then we turn the echo off, and the auto-exec file continues. So let's try a couple more of these. Here's our menu here. We have, for instance, Procom, Alt F8. And this is our modem program. And when we exit Procom, we go back to our menu. Very simple to do that way. Now, what are all these key numbers? Well, in some books, some DOS books, there are tables that show you what the key numbers correspond to on the keyboard. This is a little batch file I've made that displays what a lot of the function keys and even the alphabet keys and some of the numbered keys, what their corresponding key numbers are to DOS. And this batch file allows us to redefine what a key does right from the DOS prompt if we temporarily want a key to be redefined after our system has booted. But if we look over here, we were using the Alt F10 key, and our table says that it's key number 113. So in the auto-exec file, these key numbers were put into those prompt commands, and our hotkeys were then set. And these key numbers can be found in different books. I don't think the DOS manual has all of them in there, but there are a lot of books that you can get that define the numbers of all the keys on the keyboard. And this is just some of them here. So what we've done is we've made a batch file that runs all the software, and we've redefined what some of the keys on the keyboard do so they do the work of launching these programs. And we'll see you next time on Bits and PCs.
We at PC Voyage try to bring you little hints and tips that may help you in the operation of your PC. One way of speeding up your PC is to optimize the hard disk. This causes all the data to be in one spot so that when the system goes out and tries to get at that data, it doesn't have to search the entire hard disk. This would be done on an average of every month or every other month based upon how much you use your PC. And that's my hint and tip for today.
One quick tip that you can use with Microsoft Windows is to use the Microsoft System Diagnostic Utility, or MSD for short. It's a utility that allows you to look at your computer type, your video, tells you what operating system you're using, whether you have a mouse loaded, tells you your interrupt ports, any TSRs you have loaded, and it gives you a visual look of your memory of your computer, as well as tells you about the disk drives. To add this to your Microsoft Windows menu, go into File, New, Program Item, and type msd.exe in the command line prompt. And that will pop it right onto your little window. And that's the tip of the week.
I am a computer. You can talk to me through a keyboard by typing in letters and numbers. I can talk to you with pictures or words on a screen. I hold information which is called data. You can use computers to get information, play games, solve problems, and create pictures. Computers are used in airplanes, space shuttles, cash registers, radios, TVs, microwave ovens, washing machines, cars, video games, and video games. I have computers at my house in my watch, my music keyboard, my calculator, all sorts of things. I use WordPerfect to write school reports and letters to my pen pal and my grandma. I play computer games like Carmen San Diego, and I use a mouse to tell the computer what to do next. Video games use joysticks and buttons to tell the computer what to do next. Supermarkets use barcode readers to take information from the food packages about how much money it costs. I am a computer and I know I can do lots of things.
Watch for PC Voyage weekly on your local community access channel.
Have you had your fill of bits and PCs?
Why, do we have more of them?
I don't know. Maybe on the next episode.
Oh, bummer. You know, one of the things I like this thing. I'm really getting, you know, but you know, you can just let the air out of any of these things.
let the air out of
and,
it.
you know, I think they fly even worse that way. There goes the bed.
I'm Andrew Doty.
And I'm Randy Laviolette.
Until next week.